Hello, everyone. I'm Marina Pena, and I'm a reporter here at AfroLA. Today, we're continuing our Instagram Live series, spotlighting children's book authors who center Afro-Latina characters. And I couldn't be more excited to have our next guest, Dia Mixon. Dia is the author of One Whole Me and When I Feel at Home, among other books. For over a decade, she has taught Spanish and has helped students become bilingual. She holds a Master of Education in Bilingual-Bicultural Education, and she currently teaches high school Spanish in her hometown of Columbus, Ohio. We'll be getting to know Dia, diving into her background, her books, how she got started in children's literature, and what fuels her creativity, along as well as why she chooses to center Afro-Latina characters in her stories. So let me invite Dia into this Instagram. Hi, Dia. How are you? It's
Hi,
good to see you.
you too.
Are you currently in school right
I
now?
am. I just got out of class.
Great. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, and it's
Oh,
great to have you.
I'm happy to be here and like see you in person. We've talked through email, so this is really
Right,
nice.
right. Email and over the phone. It's good to
Yeah,
chat with you again. So just to start things off, I know a little bit about your background, but let's start there. Where are you from?
I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I'm African American, proud African American woman, and I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. But I've had the opportunity to live in different cities and even in Spain for a little while, and I've been able to travel around the world, and it's been a really cool experience. But yeah, I'm a Midwestern girl.
And tell me a little bit about being in Spain. What were you in Spain for?
Well, first I was studying abroad. So in college, I took the summer semester and went and studied abroad. And then in my late 20s, I decided to take a teaching job over there. So I was able to teach English for specific purposes in like a vocational school and in northwestern Spain. So it was a really, really cool experience.
Got it. And so tell me, how did you become interested in writing? I know that you've always been a teacher, but more specifically, children's literature. How did that come into your life?
It's kind of twofold. So, related to like being a teacher, when I taught elementary, like kindergarten, first, second grade Spanish, I found myself always kind of translating the classics like on the spot or kind of translating to Spanglish when I was reading picture books to the students. And so in the back of my mind, I knew like, man, like I could write a really cool book that incorporated places around town, or I could write a really cool book that incorporated shapes and some of the things that I typically did with my littlest students. So I always wanted to write, and then it wasn't until the second thing that kind of really propelled me into being an author was my son. So in 2019, I had my son, and I it almost like ignited this like, oh, like he has to have a book, at least one book that he can identify with. The classics are great. I mean, I'm a book hoarder anyways, and so especially with children's books, so it's like I know he'll have all of these Dr. Seuss's, and he'll have all of these like Goodnight Moons and all the books that most people think of when they think of children's literature. But like I, I knew he needed something that he could look at the character and see himself. So that meant like a main character of color. That meant a main character that was bilingual and bicultural. So that's how I ended up writing my
Right.
first book.
And were there any books during your own childhood that maybe you saw as being different and that later on you pulled from for inspiration for writing for your son?
Ooh, I don't think it was ever inspiration,
Hmm.
but my mom had bought me a book called Afro Tina and the Three Bears. And it was to me just like, I couldn't believe it that there was a little black character with little Afro puffs, and it was the story that I had recognized from reading Goldilocks or hearing Goldilocks, my whole childhood. And so it's like I could follow the plot, but it was just wild to me to see like a little black girl instead of Goldilocks.
Hmm.
And so that I will never forget that book. And I can't even remember the author, forgive me, whoever the author is. And I'll look it up
Yeah.
later so that I can, honor them. But oh my gosh. So I think thinking of that little piece of representation, not really knowing the impact really, back then, back in the early 90s when I was reading that book, now I'm like, I want that readers to have that same feeling when they see my characters. So,
And that book, like you were saying, really stood out for you from the others that you had.
right.
Um, and I imagine that stayed with you as you were putting together One Whole Me,
Mhm.
also When I Feel at Home. But tell me, what really influenced the ideas behind the books? You mentioned your son.
Mhm. Yeah, so the first book, One Whole Me, that's all little Avi. His name's Avi. He is like, so I'm African American, but his father is Colombian. So knowing how we were already kind of this bilingual little dynamic that we have, and like making sure that I'm introducing the Colombian traditions and making sure, Avi recognizes all of those that culture, even though we live in Ohio, trying to expose him to as much of that side of his cultural identity as I can, as well as what he lives every day with me. That's what led to One Whole Me, because especially after conversations with a lot of my friends who are, like, I have friends who are Mexican American, I have friends who are biracial, like black and white, and just these moments in their life where they felt like they weren't enough of one, like, portion of whoever they are, and the idea of being half this, half that, I didn't like that. And I got a onesie at my baby shower that said like 50% American, 50% Colombian, 100% awesome. And the ME at the end of awesome was like highlighted, like 100% me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like he's not 50-50, like he's 100-100, like he's 100% whatever he wants to be. So getting that book written, in a way that he could see, like, having two cultures, more or less, is cool. And it's not like a
Right.
burden to figure out, am I black enough, or am I Colombian enough? Am I African American enough? Am I, like, you speak English more, that doesn't mean you're less Colombian, or you do this thing, it doesn't mean you're less American. Like, I want him to live feeling like 100% fulfilled in all parts of his cultural identities.
Right. And you also have The World I See,
Oh, yeah.
that series. Can you tell me about The World I See Europe
Yes.
and how that came together?
So that's brand new. Just published it 2 weeks ago. Also inspired by my son. That's kind of combining my love for travel, and then my lessons I've learned being a parent to a neurodivergent child. So Avi's autistic, and going around, just when we went to Chicago, or when we traveled to little cities around Ohio, and kind of following his lead and seeing how he sees the world. That's where the title came from. Um, I just, it's amazing. And he's helped me slow down. He's helped me see, like, find joy and see the beauty in, like, those kind of what I would consider dull moments. So this book is, we started with Europe. Melissa Formasano is the illustrator. She's one of my friends that I met when I lived in Spain, um, and she's based in New York. We thought about all the places in Europe we had traveled together and some that we've been to separately, and just like, what would that be like if we took Avi with us? And what would he want to play with, or what would catch his attention if we were in front of this massive castle or the Eiffel Tower or wherever in the world? And so that's kind of my love letter to parents who are afraid to travel with their kids as well. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be what you
Yeah.
plan most likely. But if you kind of follow the kid's lead, you
Mm.
actually will have a totally different trip. So we started with Europe because we had met in Europe, and it was just a special, Spain's in the book, of course. It's just a special place for us. But hopefully our next one will be like uh, Latin America, and then we'll focus maybe on like the United States or North America and Asia. So we're gonna do a few books to conquer all the different parts of the
And do you
globe,
have
hopefully.
a timeline for those other books or?
Not yet. That was Melissa's first time ever illustrating a book. She's a fine artist, and like, she learned, I'm so grateful for her. Like, she just learned the whole process of um taking her work and making it digital to be able to get these books created and to do the
Right.
illustrations. So I just want us to celebrate this, this victory. Let her celebrate this book. And then I'm sure by like the end of the summer, we'll start talking about, we've got ideas for the next books, but I'm sure we'll really start talking specifically about the next one, and hopefully sometime next year, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
promise,
Yeah.
promise that.
Yeah. That's good. So, um, I know that your son, he's Afro-Latine, and that kind of representation is important to you because of him. But I'm wondering, why do you think Afro-Latine representation is important in general for kids of all sorts of backgrounds, right? To be able to see them selves represented in books, children's books specifically. Why why do you think that kind of representation is so important?
Oh, well, definitely, like you said, just having the mirror. So, of course, for Avi and other Afro Latina kids to have that mirror and be like, wow, because my other book I didn't talk about, um, When I Feel at Home, that's an Afro Latina character as well on purpose. And I think it's because as a teacher, I've learned that so many students still have that stereotypical, whatever that may be, idea of like what a Latina person is, what they should look like, or where they come from. And it's regional because they're thinking, oh, they're Mexican, right? And it's like, so I have to help them unlearn some of these biases. And then for the characters to be Afro-Latine, for me, is even like more exciting to teach them, because it's like, first of all, let's unlearn that bias you have. Now look at how beautiful the African diaspora is. Like, you could go
Um,
to so many different countries and see people with so many shades of brown and black skin. So like, it's teaching them the difference between nationality and ethnicity and race and all. Like, I love that stuff, and I know like those are tough conversations for a lot of people, but for me, like, having a picture book as your conversation starter is like the best.
mm,
Like, it's like you've got this thing that you can lean back on and look at this character, and you could talk about some of those things that people consider tough, like racial or cultural identity.
right.
So I think for all of my students who come from all different places, who really have no idea that there can be a Black Colombian person, or I show them, we're looking at the different baseball season started, and we're looking at some of the people who have gone pro, and they're like, wait, they're from Puerto Rico? Oh, wait,
Mm,
oh, and it's like, because they're judging based on what they see, and I have to teach
mm,
them like, you can't do that. So it's just really cool to have characters that now I know families can hopefully use as conversation starters when it comes to all of
And
that.
have you had a moment with a specific family or child who came up to you and told you, "I really saw myself in your story"? And what was that like? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, actually, it was an adult. It
Mm,
was a 33-year-old man who
mm,
his mom, she's a fellow teacher. She teaches in a small town, but I run into her from time to time at like different events around here. He wrote me on Facebook and he said, "I know this is gonna sound weird." And he's like, his mom is white and she's from West Virginia, and he's like, "My dad is Colombian," and he's like, "If I had this book when I was a kid
mm.
and I could see like, oh, you know," and he was talking about One Whole Me, sorry. He's talking about One Whole
Yeah,
Me. He's like, wow. He said, "I feel like that would have saved me so much turmoil that I had when I was growing
mm,
up and felt like I wasn't enough
right.
of one or the other."
Yeah,
And he's like, just feeling like, why couldn't I have celebrated that? And he's like, and my parents, I don't blame them. He's like, they did the best they could, but now them reading this book is showing them like, oh, we should have just, like dove in with both,
right.
lessons from both sides, and let you not made you feel like you had to choose one or the other, or ignored that you felt like you had to choose one or the other, and they wish they saw the signs and things like that. And he's like, so just know, like, I'm so happy, and for kids that are like me now, hopefully they're able to see this book. And I just thought, wow, like that's a grown up. That's a
Yeah,
grown up that said that. Like, so that was a really, really cool moment. I screenshotted that message and I kind of keep it when I feel like, am I doing the right thing here? I always
yeah.
read that message from that grown up man.
Great to have, right? As a
Yeah.
reminder.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, how do you choose to blend universal themes like what you were talking about, that you don't have to choose between one culture and the other? You're everything, right? And also making the character be Colombian, for instance. How do you choose those specifics? While also having the story resonate with a broader audience.
Yeah, I think that's a risk that I felt like it was just worth taking, because I knew, like, although I'm hoping that the world will accept the book, I'm still writing for my son. So
Mm,
I was going to be specifically Colombian for him
yeah.
regardless, but talking to, we have a group here at my school called A Foot in Two Places. It's a club, like an affinity group. Um,
Yeah.
and I actually talked with those students after I had written my first, like, or second draft of One Whole Me. And I said, like, because that's the affinity group that celebrates literally, either it's two religions or two races or two cultures. Um, and a lot of our bilingual kids are in there. And I'm like, what are the things you think about like the most, like some of those topics, holidays, food, sports, things that, and they just shared with me, like, these are, when I think about getting dressed in the morning, I have to remember who are the people I'm going to be around, or when I'm at a family function, I think about how easy it is for me to speak this language and not that language. And that really kind of empowered me. So I stuck with, Spanish and English because of Colombia, but it really empowered me to kind of choose those overarching topics that I had literally heard from students that live that same lifestyle, the double lifestyle, I suppose.
Yeah.
That those are things that they think about. And I couldn't include everything in the book. I felt bad, but what my dedication in that book is to everyone who has a foot in two places, as like my shout out to them for
And
helping
I'm
me.
curious, what are some of the things that maybe you would have liked to include? Some maybe specific things that you thought, oh, maybe I could have included
Mhm.
that. Who, yeah.
I did want to include something more about holidays,
Oh,
um, but it, like, trying to draw the comparisons, so I had originally written a page that had mentioned like Halloween, but then I was like, I don't know, like there's kind of Halloween or Christmas. It's like we kind of like we're celebrating the same thing, but like what does it look like? And it started actually giving me ideas for a different book. So that's why I
Oh,
decided not to I decided not to include a page about holidays. And of course that's
yeah.
an idea I have written down that I never got back to.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned this school group
Mhm.
that uh, you talked to about your ideas, and I'm wondering what is the writing process like for you, and where do their thoughts step in to that process? What is it like?
Yeah. So I normally like I'll get an idea on the spot. I mean, being around I work in a school that's preschool through 12th grade. I only teach the high schoolers, but I used to teach middle school and I mean we're you go downstairs and you're surrounded by 3-year-olds or 7-year-olds. So I'm surrounded by children all day long. And then my own child. And sometimes just conversations with them will spark an idea. So if I think of something or I hear something silly, um, I'll write a note in my phone and then when I have time, which is like never, I'll take it and I'll start writing. Like I'll write in a notebook. I have 2 notebooks that are just hot mess notebooks, and I'll write like little blurbs, like a couple lines at a time of things that come to me, and then that becomes like a draft. So then when I finally feel like I have enough to build from, I'll type it and then I'll start typing. And if I need to do research, I'll do the research. And some of the research is, talking to the kids. Some of it, like I'll call friends. I'll have, I'll Google things, like I'll look things up and make sure I have references and if I need anything. But the really cool thing about my first 2 books is that I had Colombian illustrators. So any references I made, they already knew, which is cool. I actually had to like teach them what some of my like US references were like because originally in One Whole Me I had said something about football and then I had to send the illustrator like a picture of a helmet, like and so that was kind of cool to switch like the cultural exchange. I eventually just used baseball. But so doing that research and kind of gathering little bits of information. I have a lot of different working documents um, that like one document will be the actual story, another document will be like my back of the book blurb ideas because those are really hard to write. So I'll have like different variations of what I might want to say in the back of the book. So that's a document, and then my biographies and some of the other information are on another document. So I kind of have these like I toggle between like 3 documents during during my writing time, but like I said, like I just kind of squeeze it in when I can.
And
A
then do
lot
you
of the
work with
time.
an editor?
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
or okay,
Oh, yes. But I like to have a draft like as close to what I consider perfect as I can.
yeah.
Um, but I know that it's not, and then I'll give it to the editor.
Right,
And
before you
so,
bring it to an
oh
editor,
yeah,
you,
oh
yeah,
yeah, she'll get it, and then developmentally, she'll tell me like, excuse me, if it sounds good or if I should consider, just a 1 pager of things I can consider, what looks
yeah,
good. And then I take her feedback and sometimes I listen and sometimes I don't. And then I rewrite it. And same with the kid, if I get feedback from people, beta readers, I'll have some of my friends read it, or I'll have my friends' kids read it, or something, or listen to me read it, and then it's like, is it sounding good? My mom is like, I should actually rewind. My mom is like the first person to even hear like the buddings of a beginnings of a story.
yeah,
So she hears it from like start to finish before the editor. So
yeah,
yeah, and then the editor will look at it again in line edit for like commas and periods and all that.
right.
And so
And
yeah,
then
so it definitely goes.
uh, working with an illustrator and that process, when does that come in? I imagine much later on.
Yeah. So the first 2 books I didn't give the story to the illustrator. I found the illustrator, but I didn't give the illustrator the story until the editor was completely done. And it was like
Mm.
perfect. Um, the beauty of working on The World That I See Europe with one of my best friends
Yeah.
was that I was just like, hey, I have an idea. And I hadn't finished the book at all. So
Mm.
there was actually 2 pages that hadn't even been written yet by the time
Mm.
she was almost done with like the 8 major spreads that went into the book. So she was super patient. But like I said, like we were both kind of like sharing ideas and like, oh, and we kind of changed
Yeah.
like one of the pages we changed the layout, and then one of the pages we changed the location, and so it was a lot more. We were working at the same time. So
So it
I don't
really
even think she ever
depends,
saw it.
right?
Oh yeah. I'm like, I don't even think she saw the
Yeah.
final story before she finished the illustrations. But that's very strange. I told her that won't ever happen again. Like I will have the story written before, but we will discuss at least what locations we want for the next one, so she can start
Yeah.
looking up her inspiration and stuff like that. But I will definitely
Right.
finish the next one before she's
And I
finished.
imagine that series really relies heavily on the illustrations, right, to show these countries and places that you're describing.
Oh yeah,
Right.
she's got a really good eye. I mean, she's been to all of them herself, all but one. I think she'd been to herself, and so looking back at her own sketches because she draws when she's traveling, or looking back at her own photos that she takes. She even has gone back. She went to France and Belgium since the book has been published, and she got to take some cool pictures of the inspiration in France. So I mean, she's amazing. And there's a seek and find element to The World That I
Mm.
See. So the character's not always going to be really right kind of in your main view. You have to kind of look for
Mm.
him. And so she did a really good job, like changing his size and putting him kind of in the background or in the foreground. And it's a really cool story, really interactive.
That's great. Um, And so I'm wondering, for an author who, maybe a younger author, right, who wants to write stories about underrepresented communities, whether that be Afro-Latine or maybe the Asian community or Native American, whatever it may be. Um, and I understand that for each case, it's case by case, but uh, what's some advice that you can provide to someone who maybe is struggling to really tell the stories about their own community and how to present that and eventually get it published, right? Because that's a whole process as well. So what advice would you give a younger author who's starting out and wants to tell the stories about their communities?
I would say the first step is like just remembering that your story, it needs to be out there. Like there is a need, and like every story deserves to be out there. Um and there's room. Like that's the key. Like yes, we know your story is worth it. And also the big reminder that like there's room, even if you've never seen whether you've never seen a book that looks like the one you think you're putting out there, or you've seen a million books that look like the one you think you're about to put out there. There's room, no matter what. That's advice that I got really early on, and I've never forgotten it, because there are these moments where you're just like, like, should I be
Right.
doing this? And yes, the answer is always going to be yes, because there is room for your story. And I mean, I didn't have any idea what I was doing, and I chose to self-publish. So I know that I'm learning every single book that I publish. I'm learning something new every single time, and that's great. So it's like be confident that your story, somebody needs to hear your story and that there's room for it. And then also be willing to learn something new, be willing to get vulnerable, or Oh gosh, just, you got to be open to feedback. And that was really hard for me as well, being open to feedback. But it's worth it. Like, it's worth getting your story out there. And in the same breath that I say be open to feedback, also stand really firm in what you believe should be in that story, especially when we're talking about underrepresented communities. Like, don't let anybody mute the part that you feel like is the most important to get out there. Um, and then whatever publishing path you take, I mean, finding an agent and getting traditionally published is one way. Good, go for it. I'm starting to learn more actually in like the Instagram author community, that there are a lot of agents that are looking for more books with
Right.
like by authors, by um, Black and Brown authors, or with
Mhm.
characters that are from different underrepresented communities. And so it's just a matter of like, just write me a message and I'll start sending, like, anybody interested, like, I'll just start sending you links to the organizations that I know who have talked about or interviewed agents, or agents that I follow, that I've heard about. But I personally self-published because I felt this urgency to get my books out there in the way that I felt they needed to be, without negotiating any of the meaning or the characters or any of that. Like, I felt very firmly that I needed to get my books out there the way that I wrote them. So that's why I chose to self-publish. So also, don't be afraid to self-publish. You just have to, it was like going to college again. It was like studying, having another major when I had to study how all the different things you need to do to get it published, but it's worth it.
Right. And that really was the deciding factor for you, having the books be exactly how you envisioned them to be. Uh,
Yep.
right, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not
And
not to
so,
say that there isn't anybody who would have published it that way, but I just didn't have the patience to see. I didn't have the patience to like submit and find out. You know what I mean? So that's
right.
just me.
It-
I'm hyper, if you can't tell. I'm hyper.
right. It's a really long process, right? Sometimes,
Yeah.
and a matter of finding folks that really understand what you want to put out. And sometimes those folks aren't there, right? If you're lucky, they are, but sometimes they're not.
Right.
And still getting your story out there is important.
Mhm.
So, what messages do you hope that your books leave readers? What I know each one has its own message, but just overall, what do you hope stays with a reader, like like that 33-year-old that
Oh
reached
yeah.
out to you?
I think it's the kind of that, it sounds really generic, but like embracing your uniqueness and like being proud of who you are. I know when I write, when I sign people's books, I write, always be proud of who you are, and however they interpret that. So whether that's what you look like, where you came from, what your interests are, just be proud of who you are and your uniqueness. Because I think, in my first couple of books, it highlighting the being bilingual and highlighting the having two cultures is so cool. And I don't want anybody to ever think that like, not like, speaking more than one language is the coolest thing in the world. Like, I don't care what anybody says, and I know I'm a language teacher, but I don't care what anybody says. So like, being proud of those little parts of you that maybe you don't consider, excuse me, to be cool. So that I think is the big message. And then with the world that I see, it's the same. Like, embracing that uniqueness. This character's brain works differently. He's processing the world differently, and that's awesome. Like, that's just awesome. So teaching those readers, maybe those neurodivergent readers, that it's totally fine. However you see the world is totally fine. And we're going to follow your lead. And then for the neurotypical readers to think like, oh yeah, like, there's nothing wrong with how this character sees the world or how neurodivergent people see the world. It's just different. And so again, embracing the uniqueness of others is also part of it. So just embracing uniqueness and being proud of the individual that you are, I think has started to become my underlying theme here.
Right. And I'm curious, is the world that I see Europe, is that your priority right now? Or what are you working on? And um, anything that we can know about what's next for you?
Yeah. So that is right now just trying to get that out there a little bit more. It's the end of the school year, so I'm not doing a very good job marketing. I'm trying to get through
Right,
school.
you're a
But
full-time teacher.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
full-time teacher, full-time parent. So
Right.
getting that out there is really important. Melissa, the illustrator, she's done a really good job with creating like supplemental materials like coloring sheets and stickers, and um, we are even working on like a little travel kind of a little travel guide that you can take with you and take pictures of when you travel, and more extension activity stuff for educators and for families. And then like I said, like eventually we'll start talking specifically about what and where the new book will focus on, the next book in the series. But yeah, for now, like this summer, if I'm at any events or doing anything, it's going to be related to the world that I see Europe until the next one comes up.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dia. I really appreciate your time. I know that you're really busy. Um, and I am going to be posting this after we log off here. But I just want to reiterate that Dia is the author of One Whole Me and When I Feel at Home, as well as The World That I See Europe, and hopefully many books to come. So thank you so much, Dia, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I will make sure to tag you in all things this conversation. So
Okay.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Marina. Nice to meet you.
Yes, good to see you.
Right.
Bye, Dia.